in order to rehabilitate the brain after a significant brain injury, you've got to do a lot of repetitions, a lot of training, and it gets very boring. And as well, with people with brain injuries, a lot of times their motivation is affected, particularly with a frontal lobe injury, which a lot of injuries are from car accidents. And so I had a client who, 22-year-old male, who I couldn't motivate for more than 5 or 10 minutes on a traditional exercise, but one day I see him, I think it was like 91 or so, he's sitting under a tree, and I walked over to him and I go, "Tim, what are you doing?" He goes, "Look at this, it's a new thing, it's a Game Boy." And I just watched the guy, he's glued to it, he was engaged with it. And I thought about it and I thought, if we could make rehab like that, if we could bring game activities, interactive technology, then we'd be doing something. So I experimented a little bit with, computer games. SimCity was a big one. And a lot of my clients really enjoyed it, good cognitive stimulation activities. And then when I heard about virtual reality and the idea of being able to put people in simulations so we could systematically manipulate stimulus presentation or make it either easy or hard or pace it to the evolving development of the person based on the rehab, I thought, that is the way we need to go with this stuff. There's definitely people that are hooked on it. I don't know if it's such a bad thing. I think that the kind of folks that throw themselves into games to the exclusion of everything else, I think they're relatively rare, and if they didn't have games, they'd find something else to throw themselves into. For the ones that really get engaged with it, maybe these are folks that wouldn't have another outlet, and maybe by practicing their interactions in a virtual world with virtual people, maybe they're going to pick up skills, something that will translate to the real world. There's a market. There's a giant market in gaming. I mean, it's pretty damn real now. So the next step is putting people in the game, not just looking outside the fish tank, but putting you in the fish tank. So because of that, we benefit in clinical applications and in non-entertainment applications because the game industry drives the tech development, drives the rendering, the graphics, the computational power, the interface devices, all these things that the medical community, it's noble, it's a noble thing, but people aren't throwing money at these kinds of things like they do for games. So people often worry about our children getting so obsessed with the digital world that they won't have an appreciation of the real world. Not just our kids, but civilization, people in general. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is that, people will have great experiences in the digital world, but there may be a time when a kid takes off the headset and says, "When can we go to a real beach? When can I go to a real woods?" Once the novelty of all these things wears off, people will start to use them more judiciously. Technology there's no doubt it's changing society, changing how we interact and how we build relationships. But I think it gives us more opportunities than threats. And so I'm optimistic, and I'm an optimist about most things, so I could be wrong, don't take my word for it, but we've got to always be vigilant for some of the unintended negative consequences. That's just normal. But I think the opportunities that this affords, education, clinical care, entertainment, journalism, far outweigh any of the negative.